The following is a Spirit Street production.
All right, with spring ball being over everywhere, we're taking a look around the Big 12, just seeing how programs are doing, the college football programs, anything happening in the transfer portal, anything popping off as far as new with spring battles, anything like that. So today we are taking another look at Texas Tech. We got Jarret Johnson here to join us. This is the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
All right, welcome everybody back to Big 12 Insiders. Today we have our man Jarret Johnson, covers Texas Tech for 24/7. Jarret, how's it going today?
It's going great. I really appreciate being on the show. Like I always want to point out, Brien, you do a great job with this channel. I think it's great information. And of course, the other insiders around the Big 12 really know their stuff and do a great job too.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that, man. And we thank you, number one, for taking the time. I know it's busy with kids and graduations and summer and all this stuff and everything going on. So we appreciate you making the time for us today, because I know that it can be busy this time of year. It can be busy. Let's jump right in. First off, tell us, what is the overall health of the Texas Tech program after last season? Like I said, there were a lot of early expectations. A lot of people predicted Tech to have a really good year. And I'm not saying they had a bad year. I'm just saying it wasn't the year that, number one, I think a lot of fans, maybe even the program, people expected. So after that, what is the overall outlook and the health of the program right now?
I think it's great. I like to say that recruiting is the most accurate current reflection of the health of a program. And Texas Tech has stacked consecutive top 25 classes. Right now, they have a top 20 class with 2025. They've done a great job adding through the portal. Although this spring window, they were very quiet because they felt like they really liked their roster. They liked what they saw in spring ball. They again, going back to those classes where they've stacked really good numbers to go with those, with pretty good talent as well. They felt like, hey, we feel good about this roster. Let's, a lot of the scholarships are accounted for. We're not targeting any position really. Now they've added a couple of walk-ons, which kind of fell in there, or one walk-on that's fallen in their lap, and they're looking at maybe another here or there. But other than that, they feel really good about their roster. You're right. Last season was disappointing in terms of preseason expectations. That loss at Wyoming to open the season really kind of nosedived the season. And the following week, they lost a tough one to a very good Oregon team where they were leading in the fourth quarter, but lost due to a rash of turnovers. And so from there, it was kind of, they were uphill the whole rest of the season. They did salvage at least a good season, good enough to go to a bowl game where they beat Cal. They won 7 games. So it was fine. It just didn't live up to those expectations. But overall, beautiful new facilities being built right now as we speak. They're totally renovated the south end zone, club level seating, recruiting meeting room, coaches' offices, and their positional group meeting rooms are all going to be there. They're rebuilding their football facility. They totally destructed one that was there, building a brand new state-of-the-art one where it was. And all of this is going to be connected with their indoor facility and the stadium and the actual football facility via a skywalk. It's going to be, it already looks amazing, but it's going to be up there with at least the best in the Big 12 and some of the best, at least for a year or so, until other schools renovate in the country. It really is. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. It's a $250 million or $300 million project at this point.
Right. Well, that's one thing, is that it seems like Texas Tech is just taking it upon themselves to say, look, here we are. We're going to be here. And to stay up with everything, you have to continue to do these facilities and upgrades and all that kind of stuff. And my thing is, Tech for a long time was kind of out there by itself. Well, it's not out there by itself anymore. I'm not saying that Colorado and Arizona and Utah, I'm not saying those places are close drives by any means, but it's not the most West team of the Big 12 anymore. So glad that they are. It seems like they're taking the approach that, hey, we can be, one of the pillar schools in the Big 12. I know we've had this conversation before, Jarret, talking about, I don't think the Big 12 is going to be one of those conferences, in football at least, that has, okay, we've got one or two schools and that's the name brand. I don't believe that's going to be it. But I think Texas Tech feels like, you know what, we're going to be one of those schools that's going to be in the running. They're going to talk about it. When they bring up the Big 12, Tech wants to be and needs to be one of those. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. I think Tech is doing everything it can to be positioned, yes, in the Big 12, but also who knows what's going to happen with this ever-changing landscape of college athletics, college sports. You know what I mean? It's not like they don't want to be in the Big 12. It's just, let's do everything we can, is their perspective, to be prepared for the future where we're situated, where we don't look back. It's kind of like in life, right? You don't want to leave any stone unturned. Like, we've tried everything, new facilities. Our NIL collective is up there with, if you're Texas Tech, that's your perspective, is you've tried everything. Now what they need to do is win. They need that 9-10 win season where they're on, where they're on national broadcasts and people not just in Big 12 country are actually talking about them. That's really the final frontier for them. And there's only one way to do that: win football games.
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned earlier that they didn't go out in the spring transfer portal and go get anybody. So talking about their roster, and they like their roster, I'm assuming if they didn't go get anybody, I'm assuming they didn't lose too many key people, or if anybody at all during the spring. We saw a lot of that, Jarret. We saw a lot of schools. I know Colorado gets all the press and the headlines, but there were a ton of schools that lost a ton of players in the spring transfer portal. I heard it was going to be insane, but it was even more insane than what I anticipated. But Tech wasn't part of that, correct?
No, they were not. They lost a handful of players. The guy that I think most people look at and kind of regret that he left was the former 4-star running back Anquan Willis, who was a redshirt freshman. Joey McGuire, the head coach, actually allowed him to still play in the spring game after he already announced he was going to the portal, and he ripped off a 40-yard touchdown in the spring game. So that was, that was disappointing. But he was probably at best fourth string on the roster going into the season. Right. So that was considered probably the worst loss in terms of guys leaving for the portal. You had some other guys that, again, they were highly recruited. You like them, but they're way down the depth chart. So I can't think of a starter in this window. Now, the previous window was completely different after the season and all that. But this window was very quiet for Texas Tech on both ways in terms of incoming and outgoing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, Jarret. Unfortunately, coaches in this day and age have been forced to look at, okay, what's the too deep? Okay, and then after that, it's, we want you here, but we got to look at just having the too deep. Now, granted, you want as much depth as you possibly can. That's the sign of a good football program. But with transfer portal and NIL, with all this stuff going on, it's like, look, if guys that are third or fourth on the depth chart want to leave, that's fine. We can go get somebody else to go be third and fourth on the depth chart. That's a bad thing to say, but it's reality nowadays. And I think a lot more coaches are actually looking at that and just, hey, we want a solid 44. And then after that, it's, okay, great. If you want to leave, I don't want you to necessarily leave. Or in some cases, go ahead and go. But we're going to get somebody else to fill in behind you. I'm assuming, and again, I'm not trying to put you on the spectrum or put you on the spot as far as what Tech's coaches are thinking, but I think that's kind of the thing of a lot of coaches these days, Jarret.
No, I can tell you from what they've told me, what they're thinking, and like Coach McGuire and James Blanchard, their general manager, does a great job too, is it goes back to your culture and, I mean, how you treat people. Like Joey McGuire will help some of these guys down the depth chart that after a season or after spring ball, you meet and be like, where are you on the depth chart? What are you thinking? This is what we're looking at. This is our roster. How many scholarships? All that stuff, and they will help some of these guys find landing spots.
Right.
I mean, it's not just like, oh, well, I hate you for leaving. I imagine there might be some coaches out there who do that, but I mean, come on, it's, I know this is a overused term, but recruiting really is about relationships. I mean, that player who's leaving your program came from some high school, who might be at that high school, or might be at another high school that you want to recruit later on. It's, you don't want to burn those bridges, sever those relationships. And then it's just about being a decent person, right? Like, this didn't work out. I get why you want to go play somewhere. Let's find you a spot. Let's find you a spot. So, and that kind of goes back to them, like, allowing them to play, whether it be in the bowl game, even though they're leaving, or in the spring game when they're leaving in the portal, which they don't have to do that. That's taking it another step. That's like, you want to come out here and play with your brothers even though you're leaving? Because my first thought was like, why let them do that? They're leaving. But then the more in talking about it and hearing the other side of it, it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, it's the right thing to do, which gets lost in nowadays and any big business, including college football. But no, I think Texas Tech right now, it's very competitive. We talked about when you were at Kansas State, how it was under legendary Coach Snyder, and that there was competition everywhere. And that's what breeds success, and also you don't have a bunch of players sitting around thinking like, man, why is this guy starting over me when I kicked his butt every day in practice? That's not how it happens out here in Texas Tech under Joey McGuire. If you were kicking this dude's butt ahead of you in the depth chart, no matter what his star rating was, you were going to play ahead of him. So people can respect that. That gets down to what it's really about. And if those guys want to leave, these guys can recruit like none other at Texas Tech. It's a completely different ball game than what Tech was doing before McGuire and all his crew got here. They will find they already have somebody ready to replace you, and probably somebody ready, like a third and fourth option. They are so ahead of the game in terms of roster management compared to just quite honestly, especially like when Cliff Kingsbury was here and he was new to the head coaching deal. In terms of roster management, it's night and day.
Gotcha. So Joey McGuire, it sounds like basically spring was, we want to do some development, but every job pretty much is up for grabs. We're going to make this be a big time competition. So was there any big time spring battles that fans may need to know about or anything? Or was there any jobs that, hey, somebody was the incumbent and maybe they lost their job?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I know that's hard to say now because it's spring and, obviously you got to get through, fall camp, but is there big spring battles? Let's just keep it here. Any spring battles that are going on, position battles?
Yeah, my two positions where I feel Tech is, I'm not saying they're ready, like, I'm not overestimating this, but in terms of Texas Tech, Big 12 football, the depth in so many spots, especially on defense, is so much better. I mean, they're just bigger, they're faster, they have more depth. The talent is there. On offense, I had two major questions. Offensive line, which is playing Texas Tech, and quarterback, especially with Baron Morton, being injured for most of last year. And it was, I'm no doctor, but it was a grade 3 AC joint sprain and his throwing shoulder, which really affected him as a passer. And he came out in spring, he looked all right, but I noticed they were holding him out. Like, he was only going half the time, getting half the reps and drills. And then I think after the 6th or 7th practice, they shut him down. Now that's warning signs. They're saying all the right things. They believe he's going to be healthy in time for the season. I hope that's the case. But if your starting quarterback is being shut down midway through spring, when he's not even being contacted anyways, I'm a little concerned about that.
Right.
Jake Strong was a guy who played some last year as a true freshman and struggled. He's actually, I think, fallen down to 4th. Ooh. I think he was 2nd on the depth chart coming in. They brought in Will Hammond, an Elite 11 4-star quarterback, and he looked great. But he was an early enrollee as a true freshman. True freshmen can play nowadays, but man, I don't know if you want that at quarterback. It's such an important position when, like I said, the rest of your roster is in such good shape. You feel really good about it. Then they brought in this dude, Cameron Brown, 6'2", 230 from West Georgia. I had never heard of West Georgia before they recruited this guy. He was kind of touted as a Donovan Smith type, or they were going to use him like they used Donovan Smith a couple years ago. Good arm, but athletic, big, take some hits off Barron. You could use him. Actually, Coach McGuire brought up, use him like Kansas State uses their quarterbacks when Cameron Brown is in. And they want to do that. especially after Kansas State's torched Texas Tech the last couple of years, using that kind of style of offense. I watched Cameron Brown throughout spring ball, and I'm very skeptical of quarterbacks in spring ball
Right.
because they're not getting hit. I mean, it's a
No.
different game.
That's right.
But he looked really good throwing the ball, and he has a really strong arm. I was shocked with how strong his arm was coming from West Georgia. And then he played in the spring game, and he showed out. A couple of touchdown passes. You could see him running. You get why they like him so much. Slithery, slippery, quick, sudden kind of athlete. Cameron Brown moved up to actually ask McGuire about the quarterback situation right at the spring game. He said Cameron Brown coming out of spring ball is the backup quarterback, and I get it. If you haven't seen him in practice, if you haven't seen the way he is with his team, I get why people would be Texas Tech fans would be concerned. But at least coming out of spring ball, I feel a lot better about him at quarterback. But he's still a quarterback from West Georgia, and your starting quarterback still has injury concerns. So that's a battle that I'm keeping an eye on and I'm concerned about. And then offensive line, new position coach, a lot of new players. When you cover spring ball, it's impossible not to feel it, in most cases, to feel a little more optimistic about your team. Because you can't help but yourself drink the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? You hear all the right things, you're seeing good stuff. It's a concern. I think there's a chance for it to be a decent offensive line. It's not going to be a type of offensive line that's going to win so many games like we talk about. I don't believe, but I've been wrong before.
Gotcha. Well, the one thing about it is, with the offensive line that they have, they definitely have some running back or a running back that they can fall back on, Taj Brooks, to be a good runner. And sometimes you need that, Jarret. Sometimes you need a running back to help the offensive line. As much as the offensive line clearly makes them, if you sometimes when an offensive line is okay, sometimes they need a running back to help them be better. And maybe that'll be the case, here. And then the offense, as they gel, they get used to one another, get used to blocking, different techniques. Maybe it's something that comes together, once the season gets started.
That's a great point. Taj Brooks helps this whole town. He's just a cool dude, man. He's just one of the classiest, coolest dudes I've covered. All the way going back to, interviewing him when he was a junior in high school through the recruiting process. This will be his 5th year, so it seems like forever ago now.
Right.
Great running back. I always thought he was good. Even as a true freshman, he had some moments. He had like 10 straight carries against West Virginia, which was a big win to seal that win at the time, and steadily has gotten better. Now, I really do believe he's one of the best running backs in the entire country. And, coming off a 1,500-yard performance. And you mentioned helping the offensive line. I think you are so on the money there. Last year, one of the only returning offensive linemen starting offensive lineman from last year, Caleb Rogers, actually at times would go to his coaches and say, run the dang ball, because it calmed the entire offense down. And when you look at Texas Tech's season at the end, other than the Texas game, they had a lot of success because they focused on running Taj.
Right.
And it settled the defense was cagey enough, would come up with turnovers or a big stop here or there. And the offense did just enough off play action and things like that off of defenses keying on Taj. But it settled the entire program down for like the month of November, basically. It's a huge deal that Taj Brooks is returning for another season. Cameron Valdez, he ran for like 300 yards last year, around that. As the backup, there was some concerns about him in pass protection. He's a different kind of dude, more of a get on the perimeter, plant a foot, and then sprint, get upfield, and he's off to the races, top end speed kind of dude. And he's had some big runs in games, in Big 12 games, but it's been real spotty. He hadn't been consistent. And then there's this young guy, and this is one of the guys, this is one of the reasons why Anquan Willis, that 4-star running back I mentioned, transferred out. Cam Dickey was a big-time quarterback, athletic quarterback in high school, who he's 220 pounds as a true freshman. They brought him in. He reminds me a lot of Taj. He can do everything. He's a good receiver. He's smart. I think they nicknamed him Captain America because he's Mr. Do-It-All. And he's, great personality according to the coaches and other players off the field. But he's got that sudden quickness. He's hard to bring down. good receiver, good pass protector, physical, smart, all that stuff. So they really like him. I mean, he's going to be pushing in Cameron Valdez for that backup spot. If Valdez struggles in pass pro, Dickey will be out there spelling time.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to take one quick break here. When we come back, we'll take a question or two, but we'll follow up with more Texas Tech football after we hear a word from our sponsor, Synergy Financial Partners.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to Studio 73.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Big 12 Insiders. Again, this is Brien Hanley with Jarret Johnson from Texas Tech, or covering Texas Tech from 24/7.
Yeah.
So, Jarret, look, like we talked about, last year, the season didn't get off to the best start. Looking at the schedule this year to start off, Abilene Christian, and then a tricky game going to Washington State.
Yeah.
That one is a tricky one because, Washington State, first of all, they were a very good football team last year, but they lost a lot, and not being in a conference, I'm just not sure. Now, going there is still going to be tough, but I think this is a game that Texas Tech's got to win. If they're going to have the kind of season that they want to have, I think that's a game they got to go to, just go win the game. Some people are going to say, oh, they got to go win by this. No. Just go win the game, because if you win this, you get North Texas coming back, and then you're 3-0, getting into conference season, and then you got an opportunity.
Yeah, the thought was funny with that is that game was supposed to be Oregon originally, at Oregon. So it's going to be a tough game, but it's not at Oregon.
Correct.
Oregon, I think Texas Tech agreed to switch up. They're playing, I don't remember what year, it's down the line. They will finish that home-and-home series at Oregon, but in order for Oregon to play Oregon State and have that rivalry going, Texas Tech, said, okay, we'll switch. And they switched and added Washington State. I honestly don't know what's left on their roster as it stands right now. Of course, if we get closer to the season, I will look at it. I know it's a tough place to play, kind of similar to Lubbock, kind of out off the beaten path, so to speak, but I remember just following from when Mike Leach went there, of course, that they had a rabid fan base and all of that. I know Texas Tech got their top receiver from last year, and Josh Kelly, and that dude's a stud, man.
He is.
Man, he looked great in spring. Texas Tech's inside linebacker Ben Roberts, I was talking to him after a practice, and he was all Big 12 freshman co-defensive player of the year or whatever, led Tech in tackles last year. Ben Roberts was talking about everybody else on the team. I approach the same way when I'm, scraping, running sideline to sideline to make a tackle, except Josh Kelly. And we're like, why? And he said he's so elusive. He's so elusive. He makes these amazing catches you think he's not going to be able to get to. And then when he gets the ball in his hands, whether it be him trying to kind of run over you, juke you, or just run past you, he said he's a handful. So, and that's kind of the thing we heard about Josh Kelly all the way around. But going back to the game and the importance of it, if they were able, I think they played North Texas after Washington State.
Yep.
And what's funny is, like, back in the day in the 90s, North Texas would beat Texas Tech every once in a while. That would be a disaster. Like, Tech would beat A&M and then lose to North Texas and then beat A&M, or lose to North Texas and beat Texas at home. It made no sense. It would drive the fans crazy. So that can't happen. So, starting 3-0, going into a Big 12 schedule, which I think is favorable, to be honest.
Yes.
Not saying there's not tough games, but I think just objectively on paper, looking at the schedule, it sets up really well for Texas Tech next year.
It does. Well, that's the thing. The first 5 are at home, and the first 2 conference games. Look, Arizona State, they've done a good job of rebuilding, but they're still rebuilding. And Cincinnati, the same thing. Cincinnati had a down year. We'll see what happens with them. But both of those come to Lubbock. So the first 5, they could easily be 5-0 to start the season. And then you start looking at it, it's Arizona. Arizona's supposed to be pretty good. Then you got Baylor coming to town. I think by October 19th, we're going to know if Baylor has cashed it in on their season or not, because unfortunately, Dave Aranda, I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there, but we'll know. I think we'll know by October 19th. That's mid-season. What's going on at Baylor, whether they've cashed it in or whether they're going to stand and fight. TCU is TCU. I think TCU will have a bounce back year, but you just look at the schedule. It's manageable. It's manageable. So I think getting off to that quick early 3-0 start, that game in Washington State, I should say, is going to be very, very pivotal for the season to see what Texas Tech has, because there'll be some demons that creep back and some doubts that creep into people's minds from last year, and they just have to overcome it, because they'll just have to fight through it. And I think they will, because number one, they have a really good coach, and he's going to tell them that's all they're going to hear all week long is what happened last year. You overlooked them, and this is what happened. I go, so they'll have that, and to be able to fight through that and go win that game. I'm not guaranteeing the victory. I'm just saying they have a coach that is not going to let those guys overlook anybody and go up there to try to mean some business.
And you mentioned the home schedule early, and don't forget, remember that renovation I was talking about, that's expected to be ready by August 31st when they open the season against Abilene Christian. And Texas Tech was the first Big 12 school, at least that's according to reports that I saw, to sell out season tickets for this upcoming season. Nice. It's going to be packed. It's going to be loud. The fans are going to be into it. 7 home games on the schedule in 2024 for Texas Tech. So it's all set up for them to have that season we're talking about, like the next step. But they got to do it. And you're right, Washington State, that could be the key, because a season has momentum to it. It really does,
Yeah, they all do. And, coaches, or a lot of coaches, I don't want to say every coach, but they break, especially when you have 12 games on the schedule, you break it down into quads. The first 3, super important. You get those, and then you get off and running. So, well, I appreciate you, Jarret. Thank you for taking the time today. Like I said, I know everybody, myself included, have a lot going on this time of year. So anytime that you can give us, we appreciate that. Thank you. And we will be back shortly to end the show. But thank you, Jarret. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Big B, thanks for having me on, man. It's always great. I just get on here and time flies, man. I love talking sports with you. So anytime.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. We'll be right back from one final word from our sponsors at Synergy Financial Partners.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to Studio 73.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. Hey, I love talking to Jarret. The guy, first of all, we're close to the same age. He gets it. He's a guy that just gets it. Look, Texas Tech is going to have a bounce back year. They have a really good coach. Joey McGuire understands what's going on, man. Look, last year, it didn't go the way that Tech wanted. It got away from them early. Literally the first game, it got away from them early. But having said that, just what I was mentioning before, Joey McGuire's not going to let these kids forget what happened last year and understand, hey, you want to get off to a good start, you want to have a good season, we need to go on the road and win this game at Washington State, and we will be on our way. Not guaranteeing, they're going to win 10, 12 games or anything like that. I just believe Texas Tech's going to have a bounce back year. I think what they are doing and what Joey McGuire is doing as far as recruiting and putting a roster together, Jarret is right. I believe that they've got something brewing down there with the renovations. They have taken the step to say, you know what, we're here. Even if all this madness goes crazy, Texas Tech is somebody that everybody's going to want regardless. So thank you, everybody, again for watching. We will be back tomorrow to hopefully do this thing better.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.